Welcome to the Veil of Truth, your gateway to uncovering hidden insights and illuminating mysteries. I'm thrilled you've joined our global community. Whether you're watching from a bustling city skyline or a quiet countryside, we're glad you're here. Globe showing Europe, Africa, so tell me, where are you tuning in from today? Chapter 1, The Summons to Gablehurst. Hercule Poirot prided himself on beginning each day with order, balance, and a certain cultivated serenity. On the morning the affair at Gablehurst House began, he stood in his comfortable London flat, adjusting the angle of his tie with the precision of a man aligning the final piece of an intricate puzzle. His shoes, newly polished, reflected the light like blackened mirrors. His moustaches, those magnificent, carefully waxed symbols of dignity, curved upward in perfect symmetry. He had just settled down with a delicate cup of hot chocolate when he heard the familiar tap of the post being delivered. Poirot rose, smoothing his waistcoat, and went to collect it. Bills, advertisements, and one invitation to a charity luncheon, nothing unusual. But one envelope stood apart from the rest, thick, cream-colored, sealed with red wax and addressed in elegant handwriting. Poirot raised his eyebrows with interest. He slit the seal with a paper knife and unfolded the letter. The scent of lavender rose faintly from the page. ***, Monsieur Poirot. I write to you in a matter of utmost urgency and delicate importance. My late husband left behind a family heirloom that has recently disappeared under the most troubling of circumstances. I beg you to come to my home, Gablehurst House in Sussex, at your earliest convenience. I assure you that your discretion and unmatched skill are greatly needed. With deepest respect, Eleanor Lynwood. Gablehurst House, Sussex. Poirot tapped the edge of the letter thoughtfully. A disappearance, he murmured. A vanished heirloom. And a lady who chooses her words with care. There is more to this matter than the ink on the page, I think. He glanced at the clock. It was not yet 10. The day stretched ahead, filled with possibility. By noon, Poirot was seated comfortably in a train compartment, gliding through the English countryside as fields and hedgerows raced past the window. The light was soft, the sky pale with the gentle grey of early autumn. He folded his hands and allowed his thoughts to settle. Disappearances, especially of objects with sentimental or historical value, often conceal deeper troubles rooted in human nature, ambition, fear, or jealousy. Poirot suspected this would be no different. As the train slowed at the small station of Gablehurst, Poirot stepped out onto the platform with the air of one arriving at a grand reception rather than a quiet rural village. A chauffeur in crisp attire approached at once. "Monsieur Poirot? Mrs. Lynwood has sent the motorcar to bring you to the house." Poirot inclined his head graciously. "Merci, my good man." The ride to Gablehurst House was short but scenic, passing through winding lanes lined with ancient oaks. The estate emerged suddenly from behind a cluster of trees, large, dignified, and draped in ivy. Tall windows caught the light, giving the impression of a grand yet watchful presence. "A house," Poirot murmured, stepping out of the motor car, "that guards its secrets closely." The doors opened and Mrs. Eleanor Lynwood herself appeared. She was in her late 50s, elegant in a dark green gown, her silver-grey hair styled with understated sophistication. Her expression carried both relief and worry. "Monsieur Poirot," she said warmly, taking his hand. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "It is my pleasure, madam." "You spoke of an urgent matter. Tell me all." She led him through the impressive entrance hall, where portraits of stern ancestors gazed down from panelled walls. A grandfather clock ticked solemnly. In a small drawing room, they seated themselves on opposite chairs. A tea tray waited beside them. Mrs. Lynwood clasped her hands tightly. "My husband, God rest his soul, was a man of strong tradition. His family possessed a jewel known as the Sapphire of Caligula. It is nearly 7 centuries old, an heirloom with a complicated history. Poirot nodded. Complicated histories often provide the most interesting stories, madam. Her eyes flickered with agreement. It was kept in his private study in a locked glass case. Since his passing last spring, I have kept everything exactly as it was. I wish to honor him. Poirot leaned forward, observing her intently. 3 days ago, I unlocked the study to retrieve a document. The case was intact. Everything was exactly in order, except the sapphire. The stone was gone, the case unopened, the lock untouched. There was no sign of disturbance. Poirot's lips pursed. A sealed case. A missing jewel. A vanishing act performed with the silence of a ghost. Yes. Her voice trembled. I thought perhaps my stepson or stepdaughter had moved it for safety. But both denied touching it. And then? She hesitated. And then? Poirot prompted gently. There was a quarrel. A disagreement within the family. I am afraid that tensions here have grown in recent months. My stepson, Frederick, has been troubled of late. My stepdaughter, Clara, is withdrawn. And we have guests, friends of the family, who arrived only a week before the disappearance. I do not wish to accuse anyone. But the house feels unsettled. Poirot let her words settle in the air. Madam, when people insist on harmony, it is usually because harmony does not exist. She gave a weak smile. I feared you would say something like that. I must ask, who else has access to this private study? Mrs. Lynwood hesitated once more, her fingers tightening. The family, of course. Our housekeeper, Mrs. Hargreaves, has a key to nearly every room. And then there is Dr. Bernard Ashe, a close friend of my late husband. He often visits and knows the house well. Lastly, a guest, Mr. Victor Dalrymple, an art dealer staying with us. He has shown interest in the jewel, perhaps too much interest. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Ah! A collection of personalities. Each with possible motives. Each with secrets of their own. Mrs. Lynwood exhaled shakily. Monsieur Poirot, I beg you, help me uncover the truth before suspicion destroys this household. Poirot rose with unhurried elegance and offered a reassuring smile. Madam, you have done well to call upon Hercule Poirot. I will find your sapphire. And more importantly, I will reveal the reason it has vanished. He adjusted his cuffs. For beyond every missing object lies the heart of the matter, the human heart itself. Chapter 2, The Household of Secrets. Gablehurst House possessed a quiet grandeur, the kind that spoke not of pomp but of age, tradition, and a certain careful pride. As Hercule Poirot followed Mrs. Lynwood through the long corridors, he took in every detail, the polished brass fixtures, the portraits lining the walls, the faint scent of beeswax and lavender. A house, he knew, could reveal as much as its inhabitants, if one observed closely. They arrived at a spacious study with tall bookshelves, heavy drapes, and a wide mahogany desk. It was the room where the Sapphire of Caligula had been kept. The empty glass case stood on a pedestal near the window, its lock perfectly intact. Poirot approached it with delicate steps. You have touched nothing since the discovery, madam. Nothing, Mrs. Lynwood replied. I wished for you to see it exactly as I found it. Poirot bent over the case, his eyes narrowing. He did not touch the glass, instead he observed its rim, the hinge, the lock, and even the faint layer of dust on the pedestal. He crouched, adjusting his angle until the reflection of the window danced across the surface. Most curious, he murmured. Mrs. Lynwood clasped her hands anxiously. Will you be able to help us, Monsieur Poirot? Poirot straightened. Madam, I never tell a lady that a thing is impossible. But I may say this, the disappearance of your jewel was not the work of chance. he began with what he always considered the foundation of truth, the people. "Madam, if you would be so kind as to gather everyone who resides in the house? I wish to meet them all, together or separately, as circumstances allow." Mrs. Lynwood nodded. "I shall ask the housekeeper to inform them." As she left, Poirot allowed himself a small smile. "Now it begins," he whispered. The stepson, Frederick Lynwood. Frederick Lynwood arrived first. He entered with the air of someone who fought constantly against boredom. Tall, athletic, dark-haired, and impeccably dressed, he carried an effortless charm that might have convinced many, though not Poirot, that he had nothing to hide. "Monsieur Poirot," he greeted with a brief nod. "I suppose you are here about the blasted jewel." Poirot raised a polite brow. "Indeed. You do not seem overly distressed by its vanishing." Frederick shrugged lightly. "Relics and trinkets never interested me. That sapphire especially. Father treated it like some sacred object. It's only natural something like that would cause trouble." Poirot listened, noting the tension in the young man's posture, the way he shifted his weight, the faint shadow beneath his eyes. "You were close to your father?" Poirot asked softly. Frederick hesitated. That hesitation, Poirot thought, was revealing. "We understood each other in certain ways," Frederick answered finally. "Though we disagreed often. He believed in rituals and legacy. I prefer action." "And where were you on the night the disappearance was discovered?" "In my room. Reading. Alone." Poirot nodded. "Merci, Monsieur Frederick. You may return later if I have more questions." Frederick left with a restless stride. The stepdaughter, Clara Lynwood. Clara Lynwood entered next, her expression shy yet thoughtful. She was slender, fair-haired, and carried a sketchbook under her arm as though it were an extension of herself. She avoided Poirot's gaze until she was seated. "Monsieur Poirot," she said nervously. "I hope you will find what you seek." Poirot smiled gently. "You draw, mademoiselle? An observant hobby." She nodded, clutching her sketchbook slightly tighter. "Sketching helps me think. Or not think, whichever is needed." Poirot considered her carefully. "Your stepmother told me you may have heard something unusual the night before the discovery." Clara's expression flickered. "Yes. I heard footsteps in the corridor near Father's study. They were soft, hesitant, almost. I thought it was Frederick, but he denied it." "Did you investigate?" "Oh, no. I prefer not to wander the house at night." She paused. "The atmosphere feels heavy after dark." Poirot leaned forward slightly. "You did not see anything out of the ordinary in the days before the sapphire was taken?" Clara hesitated longer this time. Finally, she whispered, "Someone was in Father's study 2 days before. I only saw the shadow through the doorway. But the shape," she swallowed. "It wasn't Frederick or Mrs. Lynwood." Poirot did not press her further. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been helpful." Her cheeks colored faintly as she rose and hurried out. The housekeeper, Mrs. Hargreaves. Mrs. Hargreaves marched into the room with the stiffness of a woman who had spent 40 years perfecting her dignity and discipline. Her hair was pulled so tightly back that Poirot wondered if it ever dared to move. "Monsieur Poirot," she said brusquely. "I understand you wish to question me." Poirot nodded. "Only to understand the household, madam." "You will find that I run it efficiently," she stated. "Nothing happens here without my knowledge." "Ah," Poirot replied with a small nod. "Then perhaps you can tell me if anything unusual occurred before the disappearance." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "There have been disruptions. The young master, Frederick, keeps odd hours. Miss Clara wanders the gardens at night. And that guest, Mr. Dalrymple, prowls around like a cat who has found a pantry full of cream. Poirot's eyes twinkled. You do not care for him. I do not care for opportunists, she replied sharply. He eyes the family possessions as though he is already measuring their worth. Poirot made a careful note. Merci, madame. She left with military precision. The physician, Dr. Bernard Ashe. Dr. Bernard Ashe entered with quiet confidence. He was a lean man in his late 50s, his spectacles perched neatly on his nose. His voice carried the calm reassurance of a physician who had spent decades soothing anxious patients. Ah, Monsieur Poirot, he greeted gently. Mrs. Lynwood tells me you wish to speak with me. Yes, doctor. You were close to the late Mr. Lynwood, I believe. Quite close. A good man, though troubled by concerns near the end. Poirot tilted his head. Concerns? Of what nature? Dr. Ashe paused. I am bound by duty, of course. Poirot waited patiently. But I may say that he worried about the future of his estate. About the stability within his own family. Did he mention the sapphire? Only that it held meaning beyond its monetary value. Poirot's moustaches twitched. Very interesting, doctor. And your whereabouts the night the disappearance was noticed? I was in the guest room. I slept poorly, but I did not leave my bed. Poirot nodded. Merci. The art dealer, Victor Dalrymple. Victor Dalrymple entered with the polished grace of a man accustomed to fine dinners and exclusive invitations. His suit was impeccable, his movement smooth, his smile carefully measured. Monsieur Poirot, he said warmly, I had hoped our first meeting would be under more cheerful circumstances. Life, Monsieur, Poirot replied, rarely consults our wishes. Dalrymple chuckled softly. Quite right. A pity about the sapphire. A magnificent gem, unique in its history. A collector's dream. Poirot raised an eyebrow. You have seen it? Only once. Mr. Lynwood showed it to me some years ago. Extraordinary colour. Deep as the sea. And you had no further interest in it. Dalrymple spread his hands. Admiration, monsieur, not avarice. Poirot, of course, believed none of it. A house of motives. When the final interview concluded and the door closed behind Dalrymple, Poirot stood alone in the study, the afternoon sun casting long golden bars across the floor. 6 people lived or stayed within Gablehurst house. 6 had access, direct or indirect, to the sapphire. 6 had secrets, tensions, or motives simmering beneath the surface. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back. A vanished jewel, he murmured. But it is not the jewel that interests Hercule Poirot. No, it is the hearts of the people who surrounded it. He glanced once more at the empty case, its lock gleaming innocently. Someone here, he whispered, knows the truth. And before long, the truth will speak. Chapter 3, Whispers in the Hallways. Evening fell early over Gablehurst house. A pale gold sunset had barely finished slipping behind the treetops when a chill wind swept across the grounds, brushing the ivy along the walls and rattling a loose shutter somewhere near the west wing. To Hercule Poirot, the estate seemed to exhale slowly, as though bracing itself for revelations yet to come. After a modest supper of roasted lamb and seasonal vegetables, prepared, Mrs. Hargreaves announced, exactly as the late Mr. Lynwood preferred, the household retreated to their rooms. But Poirot, claiming a desire to observe the atmosphere at night, remained wandering through the lower corridor. He found the hallways curiously alive. Not with noise, rather, with tension. Conversations earlier at supper had been clipped, strained. Clara barely touched her food. Frederick had pushed peas around his plate before excusing himself abruptly. Dalrymple had smiled too easily, while Dr. Ashe observed everything with an unsettling quiet. Poirot walked slowly, his steps deliberately soft, letting the house whisper to him. Clara's confession. He found Clara Lynwood in the conservatory, seated on a wicker chair beneath a tall palm. A lantern glowed dimly beside her, casting delicate shadows across her face as she hurriedly closed her sketchbook. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, startled. "I didn't hear you come in." "I am the quiet one tonight, mademoiselle," Poirot replied gently. "May I sit?" She nodded, folding her hands in her lap. "You seem troubled," Poirot observed. "More than the others." Clara hesitated. "This house has felt different ever since father died. Heavy. Like something unseen is waiting in the corners." "A house reflects the hearts of its occupants," Poirot replied. "Tell me, what is it you fear?" Clara stared at the lantern. "I fear that father left behind more trouble than we realized. He mentioned a secret to me. Once. Only once. Something he intended to reveal later." She swallowed. "But he never had the chance." Poirot leaned forward. "What sort of secret?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But I believe it had something to do with the sapphire." "For what reason?" Clara hesitated again, weighing her words. "Father wrote a letter before he died. I never read it. It was addressed to Frederick, locked in a small box in his study. Frederick refuses to open it. Because he fears its contents," Poirot suggested. "Or because he already knows them," Clara murmured. Poirot's moustaches twitched. "Very interesting indeed. And the footsteps you heard the night before the disappearance, are you quite certain they did not belong to Frederick?" "Yes," she insisted. "Frederick's stride is heavy, confident. These steps were careful. Almost frightened." Poirot thanked her, watching as she gathered her sketchbook once more and slipped back toward her room like a quiet shadow. A word with Frederick. Poirot found the young man on the terrace, leaning against the stone balustrade and staring into the darkness. A faint glow of Frederick's cigarette illuminated the tension along his jaw. "Something weighs upon your mind, monsieur," Poirot said softly. Frederick flinched slightly, though he recovered quickly. "Just thinking." "About the sapphire? Or something else?" Frederick sighed, exhaling a thin trail of smoke. "You people don't know what it's like living under father's expectations. He wanted perfection. Discipline. Tradition. I never wanted any of that. And yet you returned to Gablehurst." "For Clara," Frederick replied quietly. "She doesn't handle change well. I didn't want her left alone with everything." Poirot studied him. The irritation, the restless movements, yes, Frederick carried burdens. But guilt? Poirot was not yet convinced. "Your stepmother said you disliked the sapphire." Frederick snorted bitterly. "He called it our family's guardian stone. Said it protected us." Rubbish. It was just another thing he worshipped. "You do not seem to mourn its loss." "It's a cursed little bauble as far as I'm concerned." Poirot observed the sparks of anger that flared and vanished just as quickly. "And your father's letter to you?" Poirot asked casually. For a second, only a second, Frederick froze. "I haven't opened it," he said slowly. "Why not?" "Because it doesn't matter," Frederick replied sharply. "He's dead. Whatever he wanted to say won't change that." Poirot made a soft hum of thought. "Monsieur, the dead sometimes speak with more clarity than the living, if we allow them." Frederick did not respond. His eyes remained fixed on the darkness beyond the terrace. Dalrymple's intriguing curiosity. Victor Dalrymple drifted toward Poirot not long after, carrying a glass of brandy as though it were part of his attire. "Quite the evening for secrets," Dalrymple remarked lightly. "I trust you're making progress." Poirot smiled politely. "Progress is a matter of perception, monsieur." Dalrymple chuckled. "Indeed. This house intrigues me. So many beautiful objects. So many stories behind them." His eyes glimmered, not with innocence. Poirot asked, "Tell me, monsieur, what makes the Sapphire of Caligula so exceptional to a man of your field?" Dalrymple's expression sharpened. "Its age, its craftsmanship, its mythology. Some say it once belonged to an emperor whose paranoia rivaled his cruelty. A symbol of power. And power, Monsieur Poirot, always fetches a price. Even stolen power." Dalrymple sipped his brandy slowly. "I deal in acquisitions, not theft. Do be careful whom you suspect." Poirot bowed his head slightly. "I am always careful, monsieur." The midnight observation. Later that night, the house asleep and silent, Poirot stood at his bedroom window. He preferred reflection before rest. His little grey cells worked best in the quiet. The moon hung low, laying silver trails across the lawn. And then, movement. A solitary figure slipped out of the side door, moving with haste toward the greenhouse. A slim silhouette, glancing back repeatedly as though fearing pursuit. Poirot narrowed his eyes. The figure disappeared into the greenhouse's dark frame. Moments later, a brief glimmer of light flashed within, too bright to be a lantern accidentally knocked, too dim to be electric. Poirot murmured, "Someone searches for something, or hides it." He considered whether to confront the intruder immediately, but his instinct advised patience. "A secret revealed too soon is like a soufflé opened before it rises," he whispered. "Allow it time, and it will grow to full height." The figure left the greenhouse shortly after, slipping back into the house with the same nervous stride. Poirot watched, memorizing every detail. He would not yet reveal what he had seen. But he knew one thing with certainty. The mystery of the sapphire was entwined with the mystery of human fear. And one of Gablehurst's residents was very afraid indeed. Chapter 4: Secrets Among the Roses. The following morning broke with a pale, milky sunlight that crept timidly through the curtains of Gablehurst House. A gentle mist hovered over the gardens, blurring the boundaries between hedges and paths, as though the estate itself were reluctant to reveal its secrets. Hercule Poirot, already impeccably dressed and seated near the window, sipped his morning chocolate with the tranquility of a man who had slept well, despite the previous night's chaos. Miss Clara entered the drawing-room with a briskness that betrayed her attempts at composure. "Monsieur Poirot, my mother requests your presence in the conservatory. She says it is urgent." Poirot rose at once. "Then let us not keep Lady Gablehurst waiting. Where there is urgency, there is often revelation." They walked together through the long corridor, lined with portraits of stern-faced Gablehurst stretching back nearly 3 centuries. Poirot's eyes wandered over them, noting recurring features, high cheekbones, sharp jaws, an unmistakable air of superiority. A lineage that guarded its wealth fiercely. The conservatory was warm and fragrant, filled with roses in full bloom. Lady Gablehurst sat on a cushioned bench, clutching a letter in trembling fingers. Her face, though composed, bore the signs of strain. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, "I received this an hour ago." Poirot accepted the letter delicately. The handwriting was narrow and angular, written with intention rather than haste. He read aloud. "Return what is stolen before the truth destroys you all. You have been warned." Poirot folded the paper slowly. "You recognize this writing, madam?" Lady Gablehurst shook her head, perhaps too swiftly. "No. It must be the work of an enemy of the family, someone seeking to frighten us. Poirot raised an eyebrow. An enemy is not created without cause. There is always a history. He gestured gently. Madam, permit me to ask again, do you recognize the hand? Her eyes darted to Clara for a brief moment. No, I do not. Poirot tucked the letter into his inner pocket. Very well. I shall make further inquiries. Clara knelt beside her mother. Mamma, this is becoming unbearable. Why can you not simply tell Poirot everything? If there is something to confess, something you fear, now is the time. Lady Gablehurst's lips tightened. There is nothing to confess. Poirot's expression softened, but his voice remained calm and precise. Madam, lies are like the thorns of your roses. They catch on the truth and make it bleed. She flinched, an almost imperceptible gesture. Poirot noted it. A walk through the grounds. Poirot requested to be shown the gardens where Frederick Montrose claimed to have seen a mysterious figure on the night of the theft. Clara accompanied him, glad for an excuse to escape the suffocating atmosphere inside the manor. It was near the greenhouse, she explained, gesturing towards the glass structure nestled amid thick shrubbery. Frederick went for a walk to clear his mind. He said he saw someone standing among the trees, watching the house. Poirot nodded but said nothing. Inside the greenhouse, the air was warm and humid, heavy with the scent of earth and orchids. Poirot paused to examine the soil around the entrance. A faint footprint, partially smudged, but not entirely lost, caught his attention. Only one, Clara remarked. Could it be Frederick's? Poirot crouched gracefully beside the mark. It is possible. But I observe two things. The print faces the door as if someone was standing still, waiting. And secondly, it is smaller than Mr. Montrose's foot. Then who could it belong to? Poirot merely smiled. Ah, that is the question, mademoiselle. His gaze drifted to a cluster of broken stems, freshly snapped. He touched them lightly. Someone came through here recently. Someone who does not move lightly. Clara frowned. Do you think the thief hid here? Poirot did not answer. His mind was elsewhere, connecting angles, weighing motives, listening to the whispers of the garden. An uneasy encounter. As Poirot and Clara exited the greenhouse, they encountered Frederick Montrose himself walking briskly along the path. His expression darkened at the sight of them. You're searching here, he demanded. I already told you what I saw. Poirot smiled politely. Ah yes, Monsieur Montrose, your mysterious watcher. And tell me again, this person was tall or short? Frederick hesitated. I couldn't say. It was dark. And yet, Poirot continued pleasantly, you knew it was a man. Frederick's jaw tightened. I assumed as much. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. People often assume what suits their narrative. Frederick flushed. Are you accusing me of lying? Poirot raised his hands in a calming gesture. Non. I merely seek precision. But Frederick stepped closer, anger rising. I have nothing to hide, Poirot. Nothing. If you want to search the entire estate, be my guest. You won't find anything. He stormed off, leaving Clara shaken. He's been so tense, she whispered. More than usual. Poirot watched Frederick's retreating figure. Guilt, mademoiselle, often hides itself behind indignation. The locked cabinet. Later that afternoon, Poirot sought out Harold Stone, the steward. He found him in the study polishing silver trophies with meticulous care. Mr. Stone, Poirot began, I wish to know who has access to Lady Gablehurst's cabinet of heirlooms. Only the family and myself, Stone replied. Though I do most of the handling. Lady Gablehurst prefers not to disturb delicate items. Poirot nodded. And the key? It stays in this drawer. Stone opened a small, locked compartment in the desk. He withdrew the key, polished brass dulled with age. It has never left my possession. Never? Poirot asked softly. Stone hesitated. Well, I suppose there were moments when I left the room briefly, but I always locked the study. Ah. And who else has keys to the study? Stone looked uneasy. Lady Gablehurst and Clara. And, well, Frederick. Poirot inclined his head graciously. Merci. You are most helpful. A disturbing discovery. That evening, as the lamps were lit and shadows gathered in the hallways, Poirot took a solitary walk through the rose garden. He paused near the hedge bordering the greenhouse, sensing something out of place. He knelt. Half hidden beneath the leaves was a small fragment of cloth, dark green velvet. Poirot turned it between his fingers. What have we here? Velvet. Fine quality. Torn roughly. Poirot's eyes sharpened. He had seen such velvet earlier. In Frederick Montrose's jacket. Yet, something troubled him. The fabric was damp, as though left outside overnight. The tear was jagged, suggesting it had caught on something, perhaps one of the iron hooks of the greenhouse door. But Poirot did not leap to conclusions. No. We use the little grey cells. We do not run. He tucked the fabric carefully into his pocket. Night falls on Gablehurst. Back inside the manor, Lady Gablehurst excused herself early, pleading fatigue. Clara retired shortly after, though Poirot suspected she would lie awake worrying. Harold Stone disappeared into the servants' quarters. The silence of the house deepened into something heavy. Anticipatory. Electric. Poirot, alone in the drawing-room, reviewed his notes. The torn velvet. The anonymous threatening letter. The footprint by the greenhouse. Stone's admissions. Frederick's temper. Lady Gablehurst's secrets. And yet, there was still a missing piece. Poirot tapped a finger against his chin. The pattern begins to form, but the center remains concealed. Patience, Hercule. All will reveal itself. Outside, the wind rustled the roses as though whispering a warning. Inside, Poirot waited, knowing the truth was close. Very close. Chapter 5, A Night of Alarms. Night settled over Gablehurst House with a quiet that seemed unnatural. Even the clock in the hall, usually steady and reassuring, ticked with an irregular impatience, as though it sensed the tension poised to erupt. The house, cloaked in shadow, seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something, someone, to act. Hercule Poirot, seated in the drawing-room with a cup of tea, felt the atmosphere keenly. He had already observed the clues left in the greenhouse, the footprint, the torn velvet, the subtle tensions among the household. And yet, the key, the truth, had not yet fully revealed itself. His little grey cells worked in meticulous harmony, sorting through evidence, human behaviours, and whispered secrets. Poirot had just set down his teacup when a sharp crash echoed from the direction of the study. The sound was so sudden that the teacup quivered, spilling a thin line of tea along the saucer. Mon Dieu, murmured Poirot. He rose immediately, calm yet alert. Something has occurred. And it is urgent. The study in disarray. He reached the study to find Frederick Lynwood standing near the pedestal where the sapphire's glass case had once rested. Shards of glass glittered on the Persian carpet like frozen rain. I heard someone inside. Frederick exclaimed, his voice tense. I chased them, but they slipped out before I could catch them. Clara appeared from the hallway moments later, her face pale, eyes wide. "Frederick, you frightened me. What is happening?" Poirot studied the scene. The lock on the empty pedestal, already delicate, was undisturbed, again suggesting no forced entry. Yet the scattered glass hinted at an intruder attempting to tamper with the case or retrieve something hidden. A faint trace of perfume hung in the air, a subtle jasmine. Poirot noted it immediately. Lady Gablehurst wore jasmine, so did Clara on occasion. Yet he doubted either of them would have moved the case in such a manner. "Madam," he began calmly, "have you been in this room since supper?" Lady Gablehurst had appeared behind him, her expression composed but weary. "I have not, Monsieur Poirot. I retired early." Her voice carried genuine concern. Poirot nodded. "Très bien. Then the scent of jasmine is misleading us, perhaps intentionally." He glanced at Frederick and Clara. "And now, tell me, who else could have entered unnoticed?" The silver button. Poirot's sharp gaze fell on a small object glinting near the servants' corridor, a silver button carved with an intricate lion's head. He stooped and picked it up, turning it over delicately between his fingers. "No one here wears such a coat," he murmured, his voice low, almost to himself. He scanned the household in the shadows beyond the room, Frederick pacing restlessly, Clara trembling, Lady Gablehurst holding herself with restrained dignity, Dalrymple standing near the doorway with a curious smirk, and Dr. Bernard Ashe, calm yet watchful, quietly observing the group. The button was significant. Not merely an accessory, but a clue, a fragment of a larger story hidden in plain sight. Its craftsmanship suggested quality and rarity, marking its wearer as distinct, someone outside the immediate household, or someone whose outer persona concealed the truth. Confrontations and confessions. Poirot, sensing the need for immediate questioning, called the household together. The family and their guests assembled in the drawing room, faces pale, expressions tense. The shattered glass glimmered faintly in the lamplight, a silent accusation against all of them. "Monsieur Poirot," Frederick said nervously, "if this is about me, I swear." "Silence, monsieur." Poirot interrupted politely but firmly. "I must first understand the movements of the night." He began methodically. "Frederick, where were you at the time of the crash?" "In my room. Reading. I heard the noise and ran down." "And you did not see anyone?" "No." Frederick's voice cracked. Clara, still pale, spoke up. "I was in my room as well, though I may have stirred in the hall a little while earlier, thinking I heard footsteps." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The careful combination of honesty and omission was a familiar pattern. "Ah, footsteps," he repeated softly, his moustaches twitching with anticipation. "And yet you did not hear the intruder this time." I don't know," Clara admitted. "Very well." Poirot turned to Dr. Ashe. "Doctor, you claim to have been in the guest room, asleep." "Entirely correct," Ashe replied evenly. "I was in bed and heard nothing." Poirot inclined his head, observing the subtle hesitation, a microsecond in speech, a twitch of the hand. Human truth is often betrayed by the smallest movements. Dalrymple, leaning against the mantelpiece, added, "I was in my room as well, though I admit I am an early riser. I went for a walk in the garden. Nothing unusual, except the wind." Poirot's gaze swept over the room, resting finally on Mrs. Hargreaves, the housekeeper. She stood with the rigidity of a sentinel. "Madam," he asked, "you have been in the study frequently today, have you not?" "Indeed, Monsieur Poirot. To dust and tidy, as always." "I saw nothing, I heard nothing." Her voice was firm, but Poirot detected the almost imperceptible tension in her shoulders. Piecing the puzzle. Poirot returned to the pedestal and crouched again. He examined the glass fragments, noting their irregular arrangement. Some pieces had been knocked outward, suggesting the intruder's approach had been cautious, almost tentative. The footprint from the previous night came to mind, the smaller size, the careful movement through the greenhouse. And now the button, silver, lion-headed. His eyes twitched. Ah, the intruder did not merely take the sapphire. He, or she, had planned to retrieve it surreptitiously, without discovery. Yet something startled them. He bent closer, whispering, perhaps the arrival of a shadow, perhaps Frederick, perhaps the wind, or perhaps mere human error. Poirot's little grey cells moved swiftly. Every hesitation, every gesture, every word uttered by the household became part of the calculation. Motive, opportunity, and subtle behavior, the triad of truth. A disturbing hint. As Poirot straightened, he noticed Clara at the doorway, her eyes fixed on the pedestal. She seemed unable to speak. "Mademoiselle," Poirot prompted gently, "what is it?" She lifted a trembling hand to indicate the floor. There, half hidden beneath a rolled rug, was a small scrap of deep blue velvet, the same type he had found in the greenhouse days earlier. Poirot picked it up with great care. "Curious," he murmured. "The same cloth. The intruder has been here before. And not just once. The pattern repeats: garden, greenhouse, study." Lady Gablehurst gasped. "Do you mean someone has been coming back?" Poirot nodded gravely. "Yes, madam. And it is only a matter of time before we see them again. It is my belief that the thief, or seeker, will return tonight, and then we shall catch them in the act. The stage is set." Poirot addressed the household formally. "I request that you all retire for the evening. Remain vigilant. If anyone notices unusual activity, do not interfere. Notify me immediately." He withdrew to his room but did not sleep. Instead, he positioned himself so that he could observe the study from a narrow corridor, concealed by the shadows. His eyes traced every movement of the servants' doors, the garden-facing windows, and the hallways. Outside, the wind rustled through the ivy, carrying with it the faint scent of roses and earth. Inside, the house settled into an uneasy quiet. Every ticking clock, every floorboard creak, and every whisper of air became significant. Poirot's moustaches twitched. "Patience, patience," he murmured. "The night is long, but the truth is longer. Very soon, the one who seeks the sapphire will reveal themselves, and I shall be ready." In the silence of Gablehurst House, anticipation hung like fog. And Poirot, ever watchful, waited with the meticulous calm of a mind that knew the storm was coming, and that it would leave no secret unspoken. Chapter 6: Shadows and Suspicions. The following day dawned over Gablehurst House with an uneasy stillness. Even the morning mist, drifting low over the rose gardens, seemed reluctant to dissipate. Inside, the household moved through their routines with careful, almost mechanical precision, yet the tension was palpable. Every glance, every hesitation, and every whispered conversation carried the weight of suspicion. Hercule Poirot, for his part, remained quietly observant, noting details that would have escaped most eyes. He began his day in the drawing room, reviewing his notes from the previous night. The footprints in the greenhouse, the torn velvet in both the garden and the study, the threatening letter, all pointed to a calculated intruder. Yet, there was a deeper truth hidden beneath these surface clues, one that involved more than mere theft. Poirot's little grey cells were at work, sorting and connecting, even as he sipped his morning chocolate. Interrogation of the household. Poirot began with Frederick Lynwood, who appeared restless, pacing the corridor. "Monsieur Montrose," Poirot began, "I wish to discuss the letter received by Lady Gablehurst." Frederick flinched slightly, a subtle motion Poirot noted with interest. "What about it?" he asked, attempting nonchalance. Tell me, did you notice anything unusual in the family correspondence recently? Anything amiss? Frederick hesitated, eyes darting to the hallway. I don't read other people's letters. That's all, he muttered. Ah, but sometimes letters themselves read people, do they not? Poirot replied, his moustaches twitching. They reveal the tension, the fear, the secrets. Frederick said nothing, his expression hardening. Poirot knew this was a clue. Next, he sought out Victor Dalrymple, who was arranging books in the library. The art dealer's manner was calm, almost too polished. Monsieur Dalrymple, Poirot said softly, you were in the gardens last night. Did you observe anything unusual? Dalrymple smiled faintly. Only the moonlight and the roses. I am afraid I saw nothing. The house seems serene at night. Poirot inclined his head. Serene, yes. Yet serenity sometimes masks action. Tell me, monsieur, do you admire the Sapphire of Caligula greatly? Dalrymple's eyes gleamed. I admire it as an object of history, not of ownership. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And yet admiration can become desire. Dalrymple's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered instantly. Perhaps. But Monsieur Poirot, some desires remain perfectly innocent. Clara's unease. Later, Poirot approached Clara, who was sketching in the rose garden. The early morning mist clung to her hair, giving her an ethereal appearance. Mademoiselle, he said gently, you continue to be troubled by the house's atmosphere. Tell me, have you observed anything peculiar among the staff or guests? Clara looked up, biting her lip. I don't know what is important. I only know that there are moments when I hear whispers, or catch someone watching me. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You are observant, mademoiselle, which is fortunate. Fear can make one see shadows where there are none, but true observation sees all. Clara hesitated. Yesterday, I noticed a shadow near the greenhouse again. Someone was crouched among the ferns, but I could not see their face. They fled when they heard footsteps approaching. Ah, Poirot murmured. The pattern repeats. Garden, greenhouse, study. The intruder moves with caution, aware of being watched. Excellent. Clara shivered. Monsieur Poirot, do you really believe we will discover who it is? Poirot smiled gently. Assuredly, mademoiselle. Every secret, like a delicate rose, eventually reveals its heart. One must only wait, with patience and care. Dr. Ash's observations. Dr. Bernard Ash joined Poirot later in the morning, ostensibly to discuss Lady Gablehurst's health. Yet Poirot quickly turned the conversation toward the intruder. Doctor, he said, you observe human behavior. Tell me, who among the household seems most troubled? Dr. Ash adjusted his spectacles, regarding Poirot thoughtfully. All have their worries, certainly. Frederick is impatient, Clara is anxious, Lady Gablehurst fearful, and Dalrymple, calm, but overly composed. But it is precisely those who appear calm who sometimes conceal the deepest disturbances. Poirot's moustaches twitched with satisfaction. Exactly. Calm can mask intention, yes. And the small gestures, furtive glances, hesitation in speech, often betray the truth. Dr. Ash nodded slightly. I see that you observe not just the actions, but the soul behind them. Mais oui, Poirot said softly. It is the heart that commits the act, and the eyes that confess it. An afternoon discovery. In the late afternoon, Poirot returned to the study for further examination. He crouched beside the pedestal, scrutinizing the fragments of glass, the faint marks of previous intrusions, and the floor itself. His keen eyes detected a faint scratch along the edge of the wooden frame, almost imperceptible, yet telling. He traced it with a fingertip. Someone has attempted to remove the case without disturbing the lock. Careful work, precise movements. But even the most meticulous hand leaves a mark. Poirot's attention then fell on the fireplace hearth. A thin layer of soot had been disturbed, suggesting someone had crouched or leaned there recently. He noted a small smear, a trace of what appeared to be powder or chalk. "Ah," he whispered. "A subtle clue, but significant. The intruder moves in patterns, leaving fragments of their presence behind." A tense evening. That evening, the household gathered for dinner, though the atmosphere was strained. Poirot observed every gesture, Frederick poking at his food, Clara barely touching her plate, Lady Gablehurst fidgeting with her napkin, Dalrymple's calm smile hiding unreadable intentions. Dr. Ashe, as always, was measured, controlled, but even he could not conceal subtle tension. Poirot spoke little, preferring to let the household speak themselves. Yet each sentence, each pause, each glance was meticulously catalogued in his mind. After dinner, he requested that the doors to the gardens and greenhouse be left unlocked, an unusual instruction. "Why?" Frederick asked, suspicion flashing in his eyes. "Because," Poirot said calmly, "I expect our intruder to return. And we shall be ready." Lady Gablehurst paled slightly. "Monsieur Poirot, are you certain?" "Certain, madam. Patience and preparation will reveal the truth. The thief, or seeker, always returns when opportunity calls." The first night watch. As night fell, Poirot took his position near the drawing-room window overlooking the gardens. He watched quietly, observing every shadow, every movement. His little grey cells worked like clockwork, piecing together patterns, noting timing, pacing, and subtle gestures. The moon cast pale silver light across the hedges and greenhouse, illuminating a figure moving cautiously along the path. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The figure paused near the greenhouse. A faint rustle among the leaves. Then, almost imperceptibly, the intruder disappeared into the shadows. Poirot rose quietly, muttering, "Ah, the heart gives itself away." The small gestures, the careful steps. Yes, yes, soon, the truth will be revealed. In that stillness, the house seemed alive, breathing tension into every corner. The game was nearing its climax. And Poirot, ever patient, waited for the moment when the final pieces would fall into place. Chapter 7, The Calm Before the Storm. The following morning dawned grey and still over Gablehurst House, the kind of heavy, muted light that seemed to press upon the stone walls and velvet carpets. The household moved with an unspoken tension. Even the servants, usually precise and orderly, whispered among themselves with eyes flicking toward the drawing-room, as though sensing that something imminent hovered over the estate. Hercule Poirot, however, was unusually serene. He had observed, calculated, and connected threads of human behavior for days now. The pattern was forming clearly in his mind, and the moment of revelation, he felt, was near. He began the day with his customary cup of chocolate, sitting near the drawing-room window and reviewing the many small clues. The torn velvet in the greenhouse and study. The footprints of unusual size and careful pattern. The silver button discovered near the servants' corridor. The threatening letter to Lady Gablehurst. The subtle inconsistencies in the stories of Frederick, Clara, Dalrymple, and the staff. Each detail, while minor in isolation, wove together a tapestry of human anxiety, fear, and desire. A morning of confrontations. Poirot first sought Frederick. The young man was already pacing the terrace, hands behind his back, his eyes restless. "Monsieur Montrose," Poirot began, "I wish to ask about the movements of last night and the nights before. You stated previously that you saw a shadow near the greenhouse. But perhaps you observed more than you let on." Frederick bristled, his jaw tight. "I told you everything I saw. I don't know what else to say." Poirot's moustaches twitched with a quiet amusement. Ah, but Monsieur Montrose, truth is often more delicate than words. A shadow may reveal more than a confession. Tell me, do you ever wander the gardens at night? Frederick flushed slightly. Occasionally. To think. To breathe. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And did you perhaps leave any traces, small threads, a footprint, a scrap of cloth? Frederick's eyes widened imperceptibly, but he said nothing. Poirot noted the hesitation carefully. A quiet observation of Dalrymple. Later, Poirot found Victor Dalrymple in the library, examining an ancient book with the air of polite disinterest. Monsieur Dalrymple, Poirot said softly, may I inquire again about your admiration for the Sapphire of Caligula? Dalrymple smiled smoothly. It is merely historical curiosity, Monsieur Poirot. A collector admires such pieces without coveting them. Poirot's moustaches twitched. Indeed. And yet, desire can mask itself under curiosity, no. Dalrymple's eyes flickered, subtle, almost imperceptible, but he replied smoothly, perhaps. But a gentleman's desire is always restrained. Poirot inclined his head. Ah, yes. But sometimes desire walks in secret, and leaves the smallest crumbs to be followed by the observant. Dalrymple's hand brushed against the shelf. Poirot noted the faint smudge of chalk dust, matching the trace he had discovered near the study hearth. Interesting, yes, Poirot murmured under his breath. The housekeeper's admission. By mid-afternoon, Poirot summoned Mrs. Hargreaves to the study. The woman, stern and rigid as ever, entered with a brisk nod. Madam, Poirot began, I wish to speak frankly. Tell me, have you observed anyone acting unusually, or have you perhaps handled items without permission? Mrs. Hargreaves stiffened. Monsieur Poirot, I keep the house. I see all. I hear all. But I swear, nothing has left my hands unlawfully. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And yet, small discrepancies appear. Velvet torn, a footprint in the greenhouse, smudges in the study. Surely, someone has moved where they should not. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Poirot, of course, noticed it. Madam, the truth is often more a weight on the soul than a danger to the body. If there is something you know, it will be better to confess than to hide. Her eye softened slightly, though her voice remained firm. I admit. I noticed young Miss Clara wandering near the greenhouse one evening. I thought she was looking for flowers, but she seemed distracted. That is all. Poirot made a careful note. The pieces continued to fit, but not perfectly. Someone else remained hidden. Clara and the sketchbook. Later, Poirot returned to Clara, who had been sketching in the rose garden. Mademoiselle, he said, may I see your sketchbook? Clara hesitated, then handed it over. Pages of delicate pencil drawings revealed the garden, the greenhouse, and even small interior sketches of the study and drawing room. Poirot's eyes flicked over one page in particular, a rough sketch of a figure crouched among the greenhouse ferns, holding a small object in their hand. Mademoiselle, he asked gently, did you witness this? Yes, she whispered. I couldn't see clearly. It was dark, but I sketched what I thought I saw. I wanted to show you, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot nodded appreciatively. Excellent. Your observations are accurate. And valuable. He made a small note. The figure's posture suggested someone familiar with the house, someone cautious yet confident. A late afternoon assembly. As evening approached, Poirot gathered the family and their guests in the drawing room. He placed the sketches on the table, along with the silver button, the torn velvet, and the fragments of glass. My friends, he began, we have seen signs of a visitor in this house, and yet the intruder moves with remarkable care. Footprints, cloth, traces of powder, each clue tells a story. He paused, allowing the weight of the words to settle. It is not merely the sapphire that is sought. There is something deeper, a hidden truth that the intruder wishes to uncover or conceal. Frederick shifted in his chair. Dalrymple's hand brushed nervously against the table. Mrs. Hargreaves' eyes narrowed. Clara glanced at her mother, who sat quietly, hands clasped. Poirot continued. Tonight, I propose a plan. The intruder will likely attempt to return. We shall be ready. Each of you will retire to your rooms, but leave doors unlocked and lights dimmed. Nothing will be hidden. And I shall observe. The watch begins. Night fell quickly, cloaking Gablehurst house in shadow. Poirot took his position in a hidden corner near the study, his eyes trained on the greenhouse and gardens beyond. Every small movement, every shadow, every flutter of leaves was noted. Hours passed. The house settled into uneasy quiet. Poirot's mind, however, remained active, reconstructing the chain of events, weighing motives, and predicting the intruder's next move. Then, a flicker. A shadow moved near the greenhouse. Cautiously, deliberately. A figure slipped along the path, hands extended slightly, as if feeling for obstacles in the darkness. Poirot observed carefully. The figure approached the greenhouse door. And then, suddenly, it stopped, as though sensing another presence. Poirot held his breath, knowing the decisive moment had arrived. The game was about to reach its climax. The tension at Gablehurst house had reached its zenith. The intruder's identity remained unknown, yet Poirot could feel the threads converging. In the coming night, the truth would finally emerge, and every secret, motive, and subtle deception would be revealed. And Hercule Poirot, with his unparalleled observation and intellect, would be ready to uncover it all. Chapter 8: The Masterpiece of Truth. The night at Gablehurst house was still, yet pregnant with tension. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, every gust of wind whispered of secrets yet to be revealed. Hercule Poirot sat quietly in his hidden vantage point near the study, eyes trained on the greenhouse and corridors beyond. His little grey cells, finely tuned, had been working for days, weaving together motives, opportunity, and subtle behaviours. Tonight, the pattern would complete itself. Hours passed in careful silence. Then, as if on cue, a figure emerged from the shadows near the greenhouse, moving with the same cautious, deliberate gait that Poirot had noted before. The intruder paused at the door, listening. Poirot watched, heart steady, moustaches twitching with anticipation. The figure slipped inside the greenhouse. The trap is set. Poirot rose quietly, moving down the corridor with the precision of a man who had spent decades observing human behavior. He did not rush, he did not startle. He had prepared. All the doors leading from the greenhouse to the study were open. Every potential escape route was accounted for. He paused outside the greenhouse and spoke, his voice calm, deliberate. "Bonsoir, my friend. You move with care, yet you leave a trail." The figure froze. A gasp, a faint sound. Then, slowly, a woman emerged into the moonlight. Clara Lynwood. Poirot's eyes met hers. Mademoiselle, or shall I say, the careful seeker. Clara's hands trembled. "Monsieur Poirot?" I only wanted to know the truth about the sapphire, about father's letter." Poirot nodded, not with accusation but with understanding. Ah, the human heart, filled with curiosity, fear, and longing for truth. You were not after theft for gain, non, you sought knowledge. And yet, in the process, you risked everything. She sank into the gravel path, tears shining in her eyes. "I found the velvet. I followed the footprints. I only wanted to find out why father kept the sapphire, why he wrote that letter to Frederick." Poirot knelt beside her. "And now you know, mademoiselle. But knowledge comes with responsibility. You have revealed yourself, and thus, we can finish this tale together." Gathering the household, Poirot returned to the drawing room, Clara following quietly. He summoned the entire household, Frederick, Lady Gablehurst, Dalrymple, Dr. Ashe, and Mrs. Hargreaves. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, every eye fixed on Poirot, waiting, dreading, hoping. "Monsieur and Madame," Poirot began, "the mystery of the Sapphire of Caligula is, at last, to be resolved. We have seen the intruder, the curious seeker of truth, reveal herself." He turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle Lynwood, would you explain why you sought the greenhouse in the night?" Clara's voice trembled. "I wanted to find father's letter to Frederick. I wanted to understand what he feared, what he hid. I did not mean to take the sapphire. I only wanted to uncover the truth." Poirot nodded. "Our desire for knowledge can drive even the most careful into shadows. But let us now see the full tapestry." He retrieved the torn velvet from his pocket. "This fragment was left by our seeker during previous nights. And the silver button, discovered in the corridor, was placed deliberately to mislead us, though inadvertently it revealed her cautious movements." Frederick stirred. "You mean, it was Clara?" "Yes, mon ami," Poirot said gently. "It was curiosity that brought her into the garden, the greenhouse, and the study. But the heart of the matter is not mere curiosity. It is the letter, father's letter, which you, Frederick, refused to read." The letter revealed. Poirot turned to Frederick, handing him the envelope that had remained unopened until now. "Monsieur, the truth is delicate. You feared the content. And yet the truth, once known, illuminates and resolves." Frederick hesitated, then opened the letter. Poirot read over his shoulder, though not aloud. The letter explained the origin of the sapphire, its history as a family talisman, and a warning about those who would covet it. It also revealed a hidden compartment in the study, containing a small key to a safety box in the estate. The sapphire itself had been relocated by Sir Reginald Lynwood prior to his death, hidden to protect it from theft, and to test the integrity of the family. Frederick looked up, astonishment and relief mingling in his eyes. "So it wasn't stolen, it was a test." Poirot smiled gently. "Indeed. A test of character, courage, and the little grey cells of observation. And now we understand the movements, the velvet, the footprints, they were the shadows of human curiosity and diligence. No malice, only the pursuit of knowledge. Dalrymple and the unseen threat." Poirot turned to Dalrymple, who had been watching quietly. "Monsieur Dalrymple, your admiration for the sapphire led you to watch, to consider, to desire, yet you remained in the realm of observation. No further action was taken, and thus you are not culpable. But note, desire can become temptation." Dalrymple inclined his head, his expression unreadable, yet he did not protest. Poirot's insight into human character had revealed what was hidden behind calm masks. The heart of the matter. Finally, Poirot addressed Lady Gablehurst. "Madam, you feared the intrusion, the unknown. Your warning letters, though anonymous, reflected the tension in the household. Yet you too had a part in this story. The fear of losing family, the desire to protect, influenced every action." Lady Gablehurst's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot. I only wished to keep them safe, to prevent scandal or theft. I did not know how to protect them all without adding fear." Poirot nodded. "And so we see, the sapphire's tale was never about theft. It was a story of observation, secrecy, and revelation. The family, each of you, learned about yourselves as much as about the gemstone. Resolution." Poirot motioned to Clara and Frederick. "The letter reveals the final location of the sapphire. Frederick, you will now retrieve it. But remember, its value lies not only in its beauty but in the lessons it imparts. Frederick, with trembling hands, unlocked the safety box and lifted the sapphire. The light caught the deep blue of the gem, sparkling brilliantly. A hush fell over the room. Poirot smiled, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "See, Miss Amos. Everything is revealed when observation is careful and patience guides the mind. Secrets, like shadows, may hide in corners, but the truth shines when one waits, watches, and understands human nature." Clara exhaled, relief flooding her features. "Monsieur Poirot, thank you. You have seen what none of us could." Poirot twirled the tips of his moustaches. "Ah, mademoiselle, it is not I who sees, it is the little grey cells, the method, and the careful attention to detail. Every gesture, every hesitation, every whisper is a clue. And in the end, the human heart tells the story more clearly than any words." Epilogue. By morning, the household had regained calm. The sapphire was secured, the letter read, and misunderstandings cleared. Curiosity had caused temporary tension, but truth had restored order. Clara had learned the perils of clandestine investigation, Frederick had discovered the importance of courage and trust, Lady Gablehurst, Dalrymple, and the staff had understood the fragility of appearances versus reality. Poirot, as always, departed with quiet dignity, leaving behind a home restored to harmony. He carried with him the satisfaction of justice, observation, and understanding, confident that the little grey cells had once more triumphed. As the carriage rolled away, he gazed at the estate fading in the distance. "Ah, mon ami," he murmured to himself, "the mind of man is a labyrinth. And when one follows carefully, truth awaits at the centre." Gablehurst House, serene once more, seemed to exhale, a house that had revealed its secrets, and a family that had learned the measure of courage, curiosity, and the brilliance of observation. The mystery of the sapphire was resolved, the tension dissolved, and Hercule Poirot's meticulous, elegant, and insightful methods had once again illuminated the intricate dance of human behavior.